Well, good morning, folks, and welcome. It's my pleasure on behalf of the University of British Columbia and BC campus to welcome you officially to the 7th Annual Canadian eLearning Conference. I'm actually really nervous. I wrote things down, and if you know me, I don't do this. I don't do this writing down things. I'm Michelle Lamberson. I'm the Director of the Office of Learning Technology.
And I'm David Porter, and I'm Executive Director of BC Campus.
I'm feeling a little bit of a deja vu effect with this conference. It was about, I think, 10 years ago, almost to the day, or even to the day, that we had the first WebCT conference here at UBC. And I remember in the days leading up to that event, there was all kinds of crazy things going on, including the merger of WebCT with a company called ULT. And we're all getting ready for the conference, and things are going a little bit crazy. But it was such a cool feeling. There was all these people we'd never met before. There was people coming from all around the world. There was WebCT and a variety of other groups that were involved. And somebody made a comment around, you know, it doesn't feel like a conference, it feels like a wedding. And Murray pipes up in the corner. I got permission to tell this story, by the way. Murray pipes up and goes, yeah, and I'm sort of like the groom. I don't have to do anything. Needless to say, I did give him a little bit of a look on that one. But, you know, I actually understand now, and I think Dave and I both can say that we both understand now how that feels. Having a group of people like the group that we've had that has been organizing this conference do everything behind the scenes, and we show up as hosts, it's fantastic. And I think that what we want to do is, because we're celebrating the past, we're looking forward to the future, we're going to just start with thank yous to the group of people that have been involved in organizing and helping to run this conference. So we're going to start with this. I'll look over that way. The sponsoring partners. I am a little nervous, okay? BC Campus, the Educational Technology Users Group, of which, by the way, I'm Vice Chair, and the University of British Columbia as our sponsoring partners. Our program partners are the Canadian Blackboard Users Group, or CanBug, which has the best logo ever. The Educational Technology Users Group, or ETUG. You're going to hear a lot about ETUG. We're going to have a lot of fun tonight at that party. And the University of British Columbia. Our silver sponsors are Blackboard, Desire to Learn, Respondus, and WIMBA. Our participating sponsors and exhibitors are eInstruction, iClicker, the Masters of Educational Technology program here at UBC, or the MET. And in-kind sponsors are Canadian Springs, the Irving K. Barber Learning Center at UBC, which is where many of the sessions will be, and the UBC Bookstore.
We also have a lot of people to thank around the campus who have provided facilities or support to make this conference a go, including the Alma Mater Society, the Student Society of the University of British Columbia, in whose facilities we are sitting right now, the British Columbia Institute of Technology, Classroom Services here at UBC, the Center for Instructional Support and Faculty of Applied Sciences, Housing and Conference Services at UBC, the Chapman Learning Commons and the Irving K. Barber Learning Center, the Center for Teaching and Academic Growth, better known as TAG, the Media Group, and the Office of Learning Technology. And of course, there are a lot of people to thank as well, in particular our program committee, Leva Lee, Kelly Fleming, Cyprian Lomas, John Egan, Brian Lamb, Bonita Bray, Paul Stacy, Gina Bennett, and Stephanie Chu, as well as our conference team and the ETUG social committees. And we'd ask you to give them a round of applause right now. This is really an exciting time to be meeting about e-learning in Canada, with technology and user expectations changing almost daily. At my organization, which is a provincial agency, we spend most of our time monitoring the trends and advocating and promoting and funding collaborative approaches to technology around this province to ensure that our institutions stay at the forefront of e-learning in BC and in Canada. And to support instructors and institutions in their quest to develop new approaches to online learning, The Online Program Development Fund that BC Campus manages on behalf of our Ministry of Advanced Education and Labor Market Development has put over $8.25 million into the development of shareable educational resources in this province. And this is a unique initiative that has led to the development of hundreds of courses, course modules, learning objects, virtual learning labs that are used by instructors around this province. Many of those initiatives will be featured during this 2 days of this conference. But the opportunities and challenges presented by e-learning continue in 2009, and the sessions that will be presented within the conference themes, extending the CMS and learning and teaching, open, connected, and social, and research, underscore the ingenuity and the creativity and innovation that faculty and instructors around the province, educators of all kinds, are bringing to their work. We know you're going to be engaged by all of the sessions that are here over the next 2 days. And also to take us forward, we have two excellent keynote speakers in Barbara Ganley and Richard Baraniuk, and they're prepared to challenge our thinking even further by exploring some really leading-edge thought on the edge of the possible in the educational technology domain. So we hope and we expect that the next 2 days at the CELC conference are going to be a highlight of your professional calendar for this summer. And we hope from our folks, our friends at BC Campus and my colleagues, that you have a great conference. Thank you.
So on behalf of the University of British Columbia, I'd like to formally welcome you here to the conference. David has touched on the themes that we have in the conference, and I'd like to kind of look at this moment in history in some ways. We're at kind of an interesting reflective pause moment. We're looking back on some amazing innovations and projects that people have done, but also looking forward at the same time to how we can continue to help and shape technology as it moves forward. It's the 15th anniversary of the BC Educational Technology Users Group, or ETUG. That's a pretty amazing time to think about. And that party tonight, yes. The party that's tonight is celebrating those 15 years here in BC. As I've mentioned, it's the 10th anniversary of our first WebCT conference. It's the 7th annual Canadian eLearning Conference. And it's the first time the Canadian eLearning Conference has been here at UBC. And we can even go further back here. This is actually 1949 was the first time that UBC, and it may even be within the whole province, offered credit-based distance education. There were 3 courses offered in 1949. And I'm going to take you slightly further back with the next slide. Just take a moment to look at this one. I was doing some research on the beginnings of our unit recently and ran across this within the president's report. And it's from Gordon Shrum, and those of you who are from around here probably think of the Shrum Bowl, which is a football game. But he was also the first director of University Extension here at UBC. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of things with this. If you even look here, we look back, they're still looking for funding in 1938, so that much hasn't changed. But he says, an effort has been made to explore new media for the equalization of educational opportunities offered by the university. So new media then, he was talking about the radio and the directed study group. We call it Facebook now. We also look at it, and it says, in all phases of the work, the main effort has been directed towards providing an educational program with a constructive purpose and some degree of continuity. So you think about even back in 1938, even prior to that, technology has been used to help further educational opportunities, to help further education with a constructive purpose. And if you think about what we're doing here today and looking back at some of the things we've done and looking forward, I really think we need to keep this in mind as we go forward. And what we'll do at the end of this conference is come back to this point and think about it and find out from all of you in the closing sessions what you've learned and how you might think about applying it. But think about both these innovations, implementations for a constructive purpose with some degree of continuity. So, following that, once again, I really hope that you enjoy the conference, that you learn, that you share with one another. You've got educators from around the world here to share it with you. So it should be a really interesting and fun time for everyone. Thank you so much, and I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Fleming and Leva Lee to announce our keynote. Have a good time. Oh, have a great time.
They were muted.
Hello, we're live. Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. I'm Kelly.
I'm Leva.
Great. Welcome. Thank you, David and Michelle, for kicking off the conference in such a fabulous way.
We are very pleased this morning to be able to have Barbara Ganley here. So welcome to Barbara as our keynote.
Yes, as our kickoff keynote for the conference. And Barbara comes to us from Vermont in the US. She's recently left academia. She was an English teacher at Middlebury College. And she has started a not-for-profit organization called Digital Explorations, which its purpose is to promote the use of social media in rural communities. I'm sure she'll tell you more about that. I've also got a program up here with me on page 3. There is more info on our keynote speakers, and there are also URLs where you can explore their work. Barbara places herself on the completely out of school, slow blogging end of EduPunk.
So with Barbara, expect the unexpected.
Barbara Ganley, everybody.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. I think I have this. Yes. I am mic'd. Well, it's a real pleasure to be here. And this is rapidly becoming a favorite place of mine, as I seem to have found myself here 3 times in the last 9 months. And at UBC specifically. Am I mic'd? Are you hearing me? Now, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. This is quite an extraordinary invitation because being from the States, I always look to you in Canada as doing much more interesting, positive, and progressive things with education than we seem to be doing down below the border. And so for me to be invited to come here and speak to you today really strikes me as extraordinary because I am not an expert in e-learning, but I am a passionate learner and a passionate teacher. The first thing I want to do before I get started is I want to ask you, we're going to be creating a collaborative keynote today, but I can't even see the people in the end. So there's one thing I want to do right away is I want every single person in this room to move your seat, and you have to come forward, and you have to sit with people you don't know. So move while I get ready. Best part of the keynote is when people are talking and people are interacting. I'm not here to dazzle you today. I'm not here to enlighten you today. You have in your midst some of the most extraordinary thinkers that I know of in this field. I mean, sitting in this midst, there are 3, 4, 5 people I know of who I turn to all the time in my own learning about this work. You are going to be presenting amazing projects and innovative thinking of your own in the e-learning. So what I'm wanting to do today is actually, in some ways, take us way back to the roots of learning. I want to talk about what it is that as learners, as participants in our world, we need to keep in contact with if we're actually going to innovate to make better worlds. And today I'm using Prezi for the first time, not because I'm into the snazzy new, but because it actually helped me really map my talk in a way I have never been able to. So this is what I'm calling it, To the Edges, E-Learning Innovation and Better Worlds. And this is what we're going to do, is we're going to collaborate today in this talk. And I mean really try to collaborate. We use this word a great deal, but often what we really mean is we're each going to do our individual bits, and then we're all going to put them together. But children sometimes can be making things simultaneously together, and you get all kinds of crazy things that happen as a result. And we know that e-learning has with it, and why we turn to e-learning, is this promise of transcending geography. You know that here in a country so vast and with populations so far apart from one another, and that was a great early slide from 1938 about that impulse to bring everyone into education. But are we just meaning equal access to a fundamentally unequal learning situation? Are we transcending limits of time because that's convenient, or because that makes deep learning sense? Do we really transcend the limits of personal circumstance, or are we just giving that lip service? And do we transcend the limits of biology, what's possible for a single human mind versus an entire community? So today we're going to try to put this collective, this absolutely pulsating brain in here to work. This is happening out in the world. We know this. Today, Iran, what is going on with Twitter in Iran? Apparently there's been so much tweeting from Iran that Twitter was asked not to do its regular maintenance a couple of nights ago, to hold off so that the word of the protests could get out there. This is talking about social media in the Iranian election, and we've got images of, we've got YouTube, we've got Flickr, we've got Twitter. And you know what's extraordinary about this? This is from ABC News. This is the most shocking thing of this altogether, that even such things as ABC News is making note of this. We have the use of cell phones out in the world, in Africa with micro-lending. We have all kinds of things going on in Brazil trying to stop the clear cutting of the trees around the Amazonian basin by giving villages the internet so that they can talk to each other and they can pool their knowledge, their experience, and what's going on there. We see Kiva trying to make microloans to people. These are not coming from academic institutions. We see carrot mobs, which is a group of people trying to use their economic power to support businesses that are sustainable environmentally. We see all kinds of things going on in the world. We see Dispatch, a collaborative of artists coming out of Barcelona that's actually international in scope, where you can participate in this unfolding of art by collaborating and connecting with one another. We see museums doing this. We see the School for Everything in Britain doing this. These are happening outside our borders. Now, what I would like to do to start with, and because we're doing something a little different, I decided to put us a little on edge. Well, I would like you all to be on Twitter right now, if possible. And if you don't have Twitter on you, turn your cell phones back on, or you don't have a computer, make sure you're around somebody who has access to it and uses it. Because we're going to play a little bit today, and we're going to use Twitter a little bit. How many of you are habitual Twitterers in here? How many of you have never used Twitter before? Wow. Okay then, this is going to be interesting then. So is everybody sitting near somebody who knows what to do on Twitter and has an account? Is everyone? Okay. Here are the instructions for this exercise. So you need to listen up a little bit. And this is each one of you if you can. And if you don't have access, you can pool, you can do it together. But I want you all to go on Twitter and you use this hashtag CELC Innovations. And I want you, now you're limited to the 140 characters. We're limited to an hour in here to try to do some interesting things together. And I'll explain more as we go along what it is I'm wanting us to do. But right now, I'd really like you to just explore for a minute what innovations would you like to see in e-learning? And I'd like you to use this hashtag to write those down. Is anyone confused or lost at this point? Okay, is everybody doing that? I'll give you a minute. Presumably you already have this. You already know what it is you want to do. And then when you finish, yes, your hashtag is CELC Innovations. And when you finish with that, and I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes for this, I want you to go to CELC Obstacles, and I want you to go to the obstacles. And is Zach going to do this? Is he going to? And then Zach is going to feed the results into Wordle, and we're going to take a look. All right, has everybody got that done? Yes? Great. Okay, we're going to hang on to that, and we're going to come back, and we're going to look at those in a little while. But I want you just to hang on to that little exercise, and Zach's going to put it together for us so we can see what the results were. Here's the obstacle I think's out there. I haven't even told you what I want to innovate, but I will. I think this is a huge obstacle. I think the fear surrounds us. I know as having been a college professor for 20 years, that fear was the biggest obstacle to trying things that are new in the classroom. Fear of many sorts. Fear of impinging upon copyright regulations. Fear of students failing and not accomplishing what was required for them to. Fear of moving in directions outside of a discipline that has been set for hundreds of years. How do we move if we're shackled by fear? John Kenneth Galbraith says that when we are faced with changing or with the proof that is not necessary to do so, we get pretty busy with the proof. Bell Hooks says that even professors, even teachers who espouse and embrace progressive pedagogy rarely actually change their practices. Chris Deedy says it's easier to move a cemetery than an academic institution. And so when we're going to the systems of e-learning, are we really talking about speed, reach, and scale? Or are we talking about learning? We're constantly talking about speed. Slow down. Too much. It's too fast. Can't take it in. It's overwhelming. And yet, what are we constantly doing? We're creating online modules. We're creating high-quality content, not necessarily so that we can slow down and do other things in the time that then comes to us because our students don't need to listen to his lecture. And we fill it with more rather than slowing down and perhaps manipulating this content in many different ways. It's interesting. Scale. We're really interested in how many more students can we teach, rather than what is it we're trying to learn? What is it that they really need to know how to do? Chris Lott, in a fantastic keynote, I really recommend you all going and listening to, from the recent TTIX, gave a keynote about depth, practice, and really sustained reflection. And he talked about we're guilty of giving our students a quantity of lightweight engagements. And then we wonder why it is they can't concentrate. We say we're interested in in-depth engagement with high-quality content for Tuesday. Have you ever seen that movie, If It's Tuesday, It Must Be Belgium? One of the worst movies, but really gets across the point. You know, what is it we think a school is? A cruise ship, and every day we're in a new port of call? And we're expecting everyone to pile out, see the sights, take it in, take a test, and move on? I know that was even true when I was a student, and I was studying literature, and I took a course on Tolstoy, and we had Anna Karenina one week and War and Peace the next. This is absurdity. And this is not just one course, and I don't know how many courses your students are taking, but they're probably taking 4. Some of them might take 5. And we're all asking the same thing, and we're not paying any attention to what each other is doing. We are the only game in town. And then we expect them to take responsibility, to be innovative thinkers, to think for themselves. But how do we deliver what it is we think they need to learn? Because we think they need to learn a specific set of content. Often, these are the stages that you need to go through in order to pass the test to be called a physics major, a English literature major, an engineer. But do we really know that they learn these things, or do they learn them for the moment they're tested on them? That's pretty much what it looks like. That's sort of what this room looks like. And then we in eLearning pride ourselves on changing that. But my question to you is this really what we've done? Have we dressed the emperor in new clothes? The Dalai Lama has said, it is a time when there is much in the window, but nothing in the room. Ooh, he's usually a pretty nice guy. Do we have the hunger? And this is what I really want to get at today. Do we have the hunger to innovate, to bring about better worlds? We're in a world that now is crashing around us, where we're on the edge of chaos. So much is possible, so much is at stake. E-learning is one of the ways in which we have an opportunity to bring about better worlds. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to take us on an old Russian custom, and I'm going to take you through it for me first, and then you're all going to do it. Though I get to do it better, because I get props. Before leaving home, before emigrating, and I'm not making this up, I've heard this from many reliable sources, that the emigrant would place the suitcase on the threshold of the home he or she was leaving, sit on it, not fall, and look back and fill him or herself with the memories, the lessons of that time, and the reasons for turning away and taking the suitcase and heading off. So I want to tell you quickly my story and why I'm so passionate about this and what I have in mind for you today. I'm going to take a look in my baggage. We're going to see what's here. There are lots of things here. It is true I have left school. Indeed, I've left home. I grew up in a school. I grew up in a dormitory of a school. My parents didn't send me away. My father taught in the school. You were thinking it explained something. They sent me to an institution at too early an age. But no. I grew up in a school, and apart from 2 years of hippie wandering after university, I have lived my entire life devoted to working inside formal education. But I've left. I'm 52. It's probably about time. And when I left, I saw that there were some things that kind of didn't work so much for me. And it's not the name of this being international economics, but it is the fact that there were textbooks. Textbooks were still being clung to as the way for our students to learn. Now, this starts at a very early age. Kids start encountering textbooks. Now, I'm not speaking for Canada, but in the US, they start encountering textbooks at a very, very early age. And by the time they reach higher ed university, they're not only expecting one of these, they want one. They want one because we've taught them so well that this is how you jump through the hoops, and you give the teacher what they want, and you do pretty well, and they'll leave you alone. And then you go get to do the good stuff. And then there are things that I dearly loved inside those kinds of books. Shakespeare. This is a text. This is a text where you can learn all kinds of things. This was something that I would want to take with me. Cooking. Cooking. Cooking without a recipe. Cooking with local ingredients. Cooking with imagination and with friends. Terrible, glorious disasters when you forget the leavening agent. But you learn a lot, don't you? Spoons. Multiple uses. If you have brothers, as I did, very good self-defense. Mixing things. Mixing things. How much do we mix things in our classes? How much do we? Ties. I grew up in a boys' boarding school. I like this one. Formality. Rules. Then there were other things. The things of art. When I left this school, I was embarked in some very interesting things. I'm being playful here and saying a lot of the baggage is heavy, burdensome. But in the since 2001, all of my students were on blogs. All of my students were writing multimedia research essays. There was not a single student in there who was not doing inventive, innovative things in powerful ways. I saw this incredible interaction that my students were having with the world, because the world was coming in and participating, sometimes in serendipitous manners of just chance encounter, but lots of times in arranged interactions where if I was teaching a course on Irish film, I would have experts in the field participating with my students from afar. My students also got very involved in local communities, working with local school children, working in endeavors that had something to do with what we were covering in the class, but having them see how it had an impact on their immediate environment. These were extraordinary times. Everything was possible. No one knew what it was we were doing. We were so under the radar in the early days that no one knew to say no. The world was interested in welcoming. The communities were interested in welcoming. The classroom, the students had never seen a blog. This was before Facebook. They thought it was really quite interesting. And then near the end, the only impediments I saw were the walls inside academia. The walls that we had to throw ourselves against between disciplines, between departments, between classrooms. As more and more and more people started taking on at least the trappings of e-learning, our students were starting to get overwhelmed by the sheer requirements to do stuff online. Every class was having online discussion. So these kids were being expected to be spending parts of each day in these online discussions with lots of different courses, and never the twain shall meet. And so they were going out in 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 directions. And it became too much. And they didn't want to do it. And everybody was requiring them to do collaboration, group work, projects, wikis. But none of them had anything to do with each other. There's no sense of holistic approach to learning. And the students felt this. So when I left the institution, I saw these lights and possibilities coming from a window here and a window there. But I thought maybe if we went out into the community and start with the kinds of learning that I knew was possible with these approaches, that perhaps we could get back to the schools and make a change in formal ed that way. Well, I'm a year out now, and I know better. We have taught ourselves so well within the schooling system that everyone is, well, this is a gross generalization, not everybody, you know I don't mean that, but there is this incredible passivity, waiting for someone to tell you what to do and how to do it. There is this unbelievable towers in a community between nonprofits, between the public institutions and organizations, between neighborhoods, that we've forgotten how to talk to each other. We've forgotten how to participate actively. And then everyone says, no time, I'm overwhelmed. I'm just getting bombarded with all this stuff. All the time, go away. No more, can't do it. By the way, I've got to be somewhere at 3 o'clock and then somewhere else at 4. But then their doors open, and I've really made some discoveries about the ways in which we encountered e-learning in school during those early days, and those exciting early days, and the encountering now in the communities, that there are some interesting things. And now, a year later, I'm turning back and I'm seeing some powerful, powerful work going on inside of schools, all over the place. And you're probably familiar with these. And if you don't know the one here at UBC that Brian Lamb has been involved in, the Murder, Madness, and Mayhem Wikipedia project, this is an extraordinary example of a group of students doing powerful, meaningful work that has an impact on the world. Scholarly work that has an impact on the world. The University of Virginia, the digital history, is sending students out to do primary research in the tiniest little community town halls, and pulling the old letters and looking at the old ledgers of transactions and marriages and things from the 1860s and 70s. And they're completely rewriting the emigration of the Black American after emancipation. These are undergraduates. smart history, going into museums and professors talking about the artwork, and the students getting in there and participating and having that online is podcasts. Wow, that's a different approach than a lecture. The University of Mary Washington blogs. And this is one of the big, to me, this is probably the most promising breakthrough. Because if you have an entire university all corresponding, all having their classes in this malleable medium, and then they can cross-reference each other and cross-pollinate each other, the walls start to come down. And the students begin to see the relationships between the ideas in the humanities and the sciences. They begin to see that you need all these things in order to be understanding of the world. And so now I see school a little bit more like this. There's lots of going on. There's some connections in the walls, but we still haven't changed things enough. What if it looked like this? Now what I'm doing is I'm not espousing let's take down the school altogether. A year ago I would have said that. That's no school at all. Not going to work. But I'm really learning that I'm going back to my roots to value the whole scholar-teacher, teacher-scholar. The fact that one of the things that schools does for us is it allows us to have time apart. And so having an institution, a place where we can go and have quiet and have time for reflection and deep contemplation and engagement with the material, that's a pretty big gift. But we shouldn't close it off. It's not a cloistered existence anymore because the walls are permeable whether you want them or not, and the government of Iran is learning that today. It doesn't matter what they want right now. So I want to go back, and I'm almost done with my part of the talking, to go back and just quickly look at some of the core principles of learning, the core ingredients that I want to challenge you to think about in your own practices, and to challenge you to think about over these next 2 days. How are you engaging in your own life as a learner with these, and how are you engaging with the students in your classes or the colleagues you're working with across your university and the world? And I'm going to just talk about these very quickly. Passion, practice, and depth. We know about these. We want our students to be passionate about something. We want them to go after and discover their passions. But do we allow for that? Do we really allow for that the way our systems of majors and courses and disciplines and divides occur? We want them to go for depth. But we have to be careful, because if you only eat spinach, you get funny-looking bones and terrible teeth. So there's a balance, right? We want them to practice. But do we want them just to drill? Are we just giving them the same assignment over and over again? I have a daughter in university right now. She's actually in a consortium and taking courses at 4 different fabulous colleges. And every single course is designed precisely the same way. Read, have a little discussion, i.e. adjacent monologue. B, prepare for a test, write term paper, pass the course, bye-bye. Do we not have imagination? Is this the only way? We know that this is not how we retain. The brain researchers tell us this is the worst possible way to get us to retain things. So how do we do it with bricolage? How do we get it by having students do lots of different things and taking what they know and mashing it with what they don't know? Reflection, contemplation, solitude, privacy. Do we ask them to take time out? Do we have any room in our academic world for quiet, silence, thought? But then again, we have to guard against the whirlpool effect. Narcissus. and willful ignorance. That's one of my favorites. The United States knows all about that. If we isolate ourselves too much, we are also very guilty of the echo chamber. If all we do is group ourselves in affinity groups and go according to what we think and what we believe, and this can happen in a class, if we don't give students the opportunity and push them to think in many different ways. Look at the hate crimes in the US right now. If any of you read the New York Times, I hope you read Frank Rich's column in the New York Times on Sunday, and he really was pointing out that we are at a very dangerous moment with hate crimes. Communication. Who are we communicating with? We talk about this in our courses, but is it really about the student to the professor? Or is it are these canned discussions that we dictate the content of them? We're the ones who prompt what they're to discuss. Again, they just follow directions and they do it in a way that is obedient and respectful sometimes. Back channel's amazing. Who are they communicating to? Who are they connecting to? Are they connecting to the world? Are they being allowed to connect? Are there other kinds of experts out there that we don't even know about and who can produce and participate? Collaboration, we talked about this. The power of meaningful collaboration, of shared language, common ground, contact zones. The best collaborations, I think, happen when you're in a group that does not agree with each other. It comes from a variety of perspectives. Do we really, really work on that? And creativity. This is the great missing piece in education. Where are your crayons? Where are your crayons? Where is risk? Where do we ask our students to fail? I told my students, if they didn't fail, I was doing something terribly, terribly wrong. But they don't like to fail because we've told them that's not good. Risk. Do we take risks? But it's all based, all of this can't happen unless we have an environment of trust. Now this is what I want to work on today a little bit, is this creativity and this trust. Do you spend time forming a community of practice in your classrooms, in your departments, in your universities? How much conversation is there going back and forth? How do you create that environment where people trust and they belong? That word belonging is powerful. Belonging has that double edge. If you belong, it means there's a safe place for you to learn to your fullest extent. If something belongs to you, you take responsibility for it. How many students take responsibility for the course? They take responsibility for only their own bit of learning because we haven't talked to them that way. All right. Exercise 2. In these groups of 4, now you each have to think about this. And this is how we can talk about forming this moment, and I'm hoping to help you set in play these 2 days for yourselves so that you walk out of here and you're just blasting ready to go and to create some magic out of these 2 days. But first you got to talk about, what do you bring to this learning moment? What is your story? Why are you here? What do you bring to the table? Do you ask your students what their expertise is? What they bring? What, not just their passion, but what are they really good at? Students don't think they're very good at things, or they create hierarchies in their classrooms very quickly. Oh, that's the really smart kid. That's the one who writes well. I'm going to sit here on the periphery and not do anything. So, no, we're not using computers for this one. We're just talking. Wow. And I don't want this is actually going to be an exercise I've been using with communities, and it's been, when I tell them I'm going to do this, they go, forget it. This is just stupid. We don't want to do it. That shows how far we've gotten into a rut of there only one way of doing something. So, in this, I want you in groups of 4 So find groups of 4, go sit near each other. We're going to have to transcend space here in this room. And in these groups of 4, one by one, you each have a minute, and you're going to share your story. And it's just a minute. You only get a minute. Does everybody get this? Share your story about what you are bringing to this learning moment and what you hope to get, meaning these 2 days. Go. So you got 5 minutes. Can you all hear me? We're not done. It's okay. Oh, no. Yeah, go ahead. You do it. See, this is the fabulous thing about when you ask the group to take over, that what just happened is as it should be. That in a way we could have spent the rest of the time doing that. And I wonder how many times we do that in our teaching and in our learning, is allow ourselves just that luxury of letting things happen in the moment. We're going to do another exercise right now coming off of that one, and then we're going to come back to the original innovations and obstacles, and then have a brief minute of conversation together. And I hope some of you come forward. Right now, Kelly and Zach and Leva are passing out images, and you should each, there should be enough that every single person has one. I would like these back at the end. So everyone take an image. And when you get your image, I want you to use it to create a metaphor for this moment we are at in e-learning. So it's another thing. You've talked about what you hope the innovations are, what the obstacles you think they are to it, what you bring and what you want to learn, and you've learned a little bit about what other people bring to this table and what they want to learn. And now I'm asking you to move out of sort of those traditional ways that we encounter ideas and processes, and I want us to move into the realm of metaphor. And I want you to use an image to do it, and I don't want you to use this screen. What's the difference between having an image in your hand and touching it and being with it and having one up there? Now, if you're in distance learning, you don't have those options, but you sure can ask your students to go out and do things with their hands. So take this image, and it doesn't matter, it's all random. You have no idea what you've gotten. And you may not even know what it is, especially those who get the little bitty ones. I've got big ones, I've got little ones, I've got middle-sized ones, and they're all over the place. And the instinct is you're going to be sharing these and saying, what is this? Or, wow. Or, who took this? Or, why does she have her website on there? You know, what I want you to do is take a minute, and I'm going to be quiet now, and you're to come up with a metaphor for using this image to help you come up with a metaphor about this moment in e-learning. So there should be silence in the room. All right, I guess you guys came up with a lot of metaphors, or the metaphors led to something. But those are the longest-winded metaphors I've ever heard. Must be a bunch of academics in this room. All right, now you have a new card, don't you? You have a new card, and you've heard the metaphor that the person who originally had this card used and came up with. Your task now with this new card is to look even more closely at it than perhaps the person who originally had this card, and you are to build on that person's metaphor. You have to use that person's metaphor somehow, but you have to take it into a new direction. Now, when I invite you to share this next time, short and sweet, no side conversations, class. All right? So look deeply, quiet, silent, look deeply. Though some people think with their mouths, I know this. But Not right now. Okay. Build on the metaphor. In your own head. Now that you have taken this 2 steps, imagine if you were with a group of students and the actual topic, the subject, was your discipline or the content of your course. And you were asking your students to go through an exercise like this. First of all, there's a lot of bonding that takes place when students or anyone is asked to do something that A, may seem slightly preposterous, and B, is new, because you're feeling awkward in the moment, but so is everyone. And so a lot of bonding can occur around that, and bonding is very important in a learning environment for students to feel safe enough to take risks in order really to learn. The other thing that happens is bridging. If you're really in contact zones with people who are not like yourself and who perhaps hold very different beliefs and perspectives, you have to have bridges between you in order for you not to be polarized in your own echo chamber areas and just shouting at each other, but to really communicate, to be able to collaborate, to build that learning environment. Did anyone have something interesting and unexpected come out of that particular exercise? Anybody in here find that moving that particular metaphor, something very interesting came up that you hadn't really thought about before? No one. Yes, raise your hand if you did. 4 people in the room, good. Okay, you 2 come on up here. The rest of you knew that was coming. How many of you have fun in your classes? How many of your students have fun in your classes? Good. All right, tell us about it. I don't know how to turn this on. It is, that's on now.
Okay, well, what I got was a van with a whole bunch of fruit in the back. And what I said was, this is, you know, the cornucopia of educational opportunities and technologies. And the person who brought it back to me said, well, what about all the things that we're not offering in there? Thinking about, you know, what's actually not in the truck. And I thought that was a, whoa, just go. I thought that was a really great insight that, you know, people are only seeing what we're giving to them, but there's this whole world out there that we're not necessarily seeing. So.
I actually am holding the picture that I got, and for those of you in the front, you can probably see it. If you're not in the front, it's a stairway inside a home. Looks like inside a home to me. There's a window on the stairway, and there's light shining in the window because you can see it on the opposite side on the banister of the stairway. When I first looked at it, I thought, stairway to heaven. We can increase our learning and go up. And when I gave it to Renee later, she said, I'd like to open that window. So that was our learning.
Great, awesome. Now, what were your innovations that you wanted to? The first exercise. What were the innovations that you want personally to see come to e-learning?
More of a concept than innovation is just that it's very. What did I say? I'm not there now.
We've had so many conversations, we can't.
I know. Well, actually, that's a really good case in point. We have so many conversations in class. Imagine these students going on, woo, woo, how do they pull them all in?
One of the things, sort of a philosophy, is actual interactive learning rather than just giving students things that are kind of cool. There's lots of tech for the sake of tech and interactivity for the sake of interactivity, and you can roll over something and words pop up, but what is that doing? How is that teaching? And is it actually advancing the goal of education?
What's the obstacle?
Well, the obstacle is how we're thinking about technology for its own sake rather than its purpose.
One of the stories that Renee told me when we were talking about that was about a colleague of hers that wants to write a book. except she wants to write it online, but it's going to be a book, but online. And as we talked about this, she shook her head and said, no, that's not what it's all about. That's not what we're supposed to do. But there's the rewards. A book is a very tangible thing. You can put it on your CV. You've done a book. Good. And we don't seem to have that same set of rewards for other kinds of activities. And I guess similarly in a classroom, when you ask kids to do, when you ask your students to do something very innovative and very different, one of the worries I think they may have is, well, how am I going to get marked on that? And am I going to get a lower mark if I do something really out of the box that the teacher doesn't understand? And marks are important.
Absolutely. And one of the, I think, the key obstacles to all of this work is that we are still holding tight in our hands and our ways of thinking the old systems. Even when we're saying we're innovating with tools and approaches in the front end and getting very creative perhaps with what we're doing in the class, we're still approaching evaluation exactly the same way as we always have. And we're even calling something e-portfolios that most of the ones I've seen look like the students are producing the exact same work and are essentially getting graded by the teacher in the exact same way, though with a side of self-reflection. How is that different? What are we really doing to shift learning? And we would all agree that our students, our populations are not well enough educated. We are not doing a very good job. And it is not equitable. It's a classist society. Who gets educated at the very highest rungs? Now, Canada's a whole lot better than US, again. US is down at the bottom of that. But think about that. How are you using evaluation? Why are you using the evaluation tools you are? So today we're about to wrap this up, and I want to thank you too. And I didn't. And my intention today was not to deliver a keynote, as I said at the beginning, to enlighten or dazzle you. What I wanted to do was ask some questions, put an array of the questions and of the themes that I hope that you're going to encounter deeply over these next 2 days, and that you really take on in a very serious way as you move forward with e-learning. Because the potential is there, suddenly, to do things we never could do before, to change the game altogether. But we have to have the will to move past the barriers that have separated us and that have created learning as a boxed endeavor that is just for the sake of passing a course and getting a degree and getting some kind of accreditation, that we actually can't use those things we've done in school in the thing we've been accredited to do. So how are we, as the ones at the vanguard, the forefront of this movement, how are you engaging and encountering those? So I hope I muddied the waters up for you. Good. Because that, I think, is what a teacher does well, is not to deliver a tidy, packaged beginning, middle, and end, but to throw you in the deep end and ask you to swim and find your creative way out together. So I think we have time for just one question, maybe. You said there's some wiggle room. If there are any questions or comeback, does anybody want to push back? This is my favorite thing, is if there's pushback. You all think this is great? Yeah.
Sure. One of the things that I find in class is that I sometimes don't want to do interesting things because I'm almost happy sitting there just taking it in, because that means I don't have to think.
Exactly. We've taught you so well since you were a little kid and your teacher told you to sit down, be quiet, stop squiggling.
Exactly.
Squirming.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, one of the things is how do you get past that initial, because students are not going to like it in the beginning because they're going to be forced to think. How do you get past that?
Very first thing I say to my students is, A, if you haven't heard about me, you better go find out. B, You will be in free fall if I am doing my job. But you will be in free fall in a safe place, and we're all there together, and we're all finding our way together. And it's hard work, and it's not going to be fun. And for the first third of the semester, you would really like to throw me out the window. And that is okay. Why shouldn't we expect that if we're asking students to almost violate everything we've taught them up till then? It's very hard, and I've found this in communities to be very hard. But I've found these kinds of exercises, and they're not icebreakers. I do not like icebreakers. I like real work, real creative work that goes to something. And so if we ask them to do meaningful work immediately, bringing the stuff they already know from the world, they will shock you at every turn. I had students back in the fall of 2001 creating term papers with hot link. They'd created videos as footnotes. I never thought of that. I never would have thought of that. But in that sense, this kid was interviewing a filmmaker. Hello? This makes sense. But she was very scared at the beginning. Being scared is okay. I think it's okay. We've got to expect that, and we talk about that. We talk about it. Yeah.
Hi, just responding to what Andre was saying and what you said about just sort of this fear and overwhelm that can happen when we're responding to so much. And I was just thinking about the picture that I got, which was the picture of like a heron looking into the water. And can you hear me?
Yep.
Michelle, I don't know what kind of heron.
Michelle said, what kind of heron?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so moving on. So, but the metaphor was that the heron is, hunting and working and looking, and all of a sudden he's confronted with his reflection. And so when I had to build on that, I was thinking, interestingly, for the heron to actually hunt effectively, the heron has to be still and look closely and then move. And so I guess my job here is a community practice facilitator. So I sort of have to create this kind of space for trust. And I guess I really hear what you're saying in terms of being overwhelmed and being scared. But I guess I think we need to really give time for being still. And the irony is, we're at a conference where none of us are going to be still for the next 3 days. And I guess, for me, that seems the challenge of this time, to almost sort of empty ourselves of what we are expecting to be open to what might be next. So that's my response. But I just don't know, what do you think? What do you think?
Little bit of pushback, just
yes,
a little bit.
Good.
What I'm wondering is, if we look at things like if we're teaching English or history or my own topic, psychology, I can see the sort of innovative e-learning we've been talking about fitting. But if we look at something where someone has been trained in an occupation where they are going to be held responsible for others, I think it would be a lot harder to introduce that kind of creativity. I'm thinking like, if someone's going to become a surgeon, the kind of education they go through, how do we introduce kind of innovation and creativity to that where they are going to be held responsible for things like people's organs?
I would want my surgeon to have a sense of perspective of what that person is doing vis-a-vis the world and me. I would not want a surgeon just to be a technician. I don't think anybody should be a technician. We should be participating in society, and whatever it is, whatever job we have, we can see ourselves as mere technicians, or we can see ourselves as much more fully developed, and all that full development that we have of who we are as humans makes us, I think, better at what we do. And a surgeon, you know, medical institutions are notorious for not communicating well with each other interdepartmentally. So the infectious disease unit and the surgical unit don't have any say. And they may have some really amazing things to share, but they've never been given that, not only given that opportunity, but say, that is what we need to do. You're going to develop your technical expertise. This is something we're really good at, easily good at. That's the simple stuff. The harder stuff. But what makes us truly human is the touching stuff, in a way. You know, I don't want to leave us on a, you know, we're kumbaya, you know.
I think I understand what you mean. Thank you.
Got it? Yes, and then those of you who feel that you want to go and this will be the last comment, question, pushback.
Both of our images here, we started off with the metaphor of kind of hope and the emergence of technology, and then when we flipped it around, we both put all the pushback, if you will, and all the obstacles we were facing. And when I look at some things we did, I mean, I missed the first half of your presentation because I was signing up for Twitter and then found this really, really cool Prezi stuff that I had to really check out. And maybe that's fine because that's the valuable thing I got out of it. But the pushback I get is when we try stuff like this, they don't pay attention to the old stuff we do. And how do you address that?
What do you mean by the old stuff we do?
This you standing at the front lecturing type ideal of what a lot of traditional education is. And when you're trying to incorporate Twitter and Prezi and all these really neat things, and the second that comes in, as I said, I missed the first half of your presentation, but got a lot of cool stuff out of it anyway.
I think that what I always think about any approach that we take is that we should be able to wildly experiment and know that sometimes that's distracting, but there are times for that. And I think this is a time for that. So I'm absolutely fine with that. You know, that those quiet spaces, sometimes we need to be alone actually to do that. And to go back and reflect a little bit more. But I also think that we should have to, in a way, defend our use of whatever approach it is. Whatever approach it is. So for instance, my students, and if we put this in an academic, if my students say they want to write a traditional academic research paper and with footnotes and all that, and I go, fine, tell me why that's the best approach to what you're trying to do. You have to defend that as part of your doing that. If you want to make a video, tell me why, or the group why, this is the best approach. So shouldn't we take all of the tools that are at our disposal and use them well when we can, but not be dazzled by them either? Have a very cool embrace of them? That's what I think. Lectures are great sometimes. Sometimes. All right, thank you so much. I can't wait to see what you do.